All right, everybody, we should be live. Welcome to the May 30th Strength Club Q&A / lift review / shit talking session. I'm here with my boy Chase Lindley. How's it going, man?
It's happening. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. My wife gets back from Japan in 3 or 4 days, I think. So I'm flexing the mustache for the remainder of my time here.
Hell yeah.
As soon as she gets back, it's immediately gone. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to. I'm allowed to keep it, but it's just gross. It doesn't.
Does she like facial hair at all?
No, I don't think I would like facial hair if I was a girl either. I haven't kissed anyone with facial hair, but I bet it would be gross.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, so have you kissed a dog? Have you kissed a dog or like an
also
animal?
No.
You never have, like on the forehead or anything like that. Like you've seen a dog, or have you ever had a dog and it's like, hey, what's up?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought you meant a mouth kiss with a dog.
No.
Dog. Yeah, I still think that's gross.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I could never imagine asking someone to kiss a mustache. It feels spiky to me still. I like how it looks, but it feels spiky.
Yeah.
I can't ask that of my lovely wife. But yeah, so mustache is going away in a few more days. I love walking around the gym with it, just short shorts and tank top on.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like we're back in the 70s. But today's episode, we're going to be going over the deadlift. Stig's Red, love the flavor saver. SK, yeah. So we got Theodore Marinovich. What's up, Theodore? We got Stig's Red. We got some videos from Stig's Red today, too. That should be cool. We have a deadlift from one of his relatives. So that would be cool. It says Mrs. Stig's Red, but the girl also looks super young. So she looks like she's 14. Andrew Travis, how's it going, my dude? And all of you guys, anybody in the comments, ask questions today. Was the mustache a bet you lost? No, it looks nice, Theodore. Thank you. I didn't lose a bet. I'm very pretty. But yeah, ask questions. We're going to be going over a lot of technical stuff for the deadlift for like the first 30, 35 minutes. And then after that, we're going to be doing a video review. We'll probably sprinkle in a little bit of both. But okay, we'll get started then. Chase, the deadlift. How do you feel about it?
Love the deadlift, man. Personally, I've always kind of struggled with it. I've always kind of, it's always been lacking for me, I think, in terms of my squat. As I kind of went through like the Texas method and kind of more intermediate style programming, I always found that I wasn't doing enough deadlifting and my numbers are always pretty close to what I'm squatting, right? So like I remember a time where I was squatting, 365 for some fives, and I was pulling just over 4. Like the disparity between the two was really close, and it always kind of irked me. I always thought I needed to get a bigger deadlift. So now that I've kind of had that thought in the back of my mind, I've been training hard for it, and I'm kind of happy with it. But I think more so it's just how I'm built, and I'm more suitable for squatting. So the two are always pretty close.
That was going to be my next question. So, whenever you're analyzing the deadlift for yourself, do you think it's kind of an anthropometry thing that stands out at the forefront? Or do you think it's a training resources thing with, how you kind of developed your programming through early or intermediate to advanced?
I think a little bit of both. Like, I think I've always kind of struggled with a little bit of a thoracic extension. Now that I've been doing the Olympic lifts, I've noticed that I'm able to hold that thoracic extension a little bit better through a longer range of motion. And now we're locking out, or kind of like the mid-thigh positions where I always tend to round the most. That's always really solid now. So, yeah, again, I think it's more both.
Some light questions. C said, should I take off the squat shoes for the deadlift? It really depends. More often than not, no. You don't. I think really
no.
Need to.
I mean, if you can't lock out another inch, or it's even less than an inch, maybe 3/4 or half an inch, then you're just not strong enough.
Yeah, if you meet someone who has a very short torso, and you'll see this a lot with women, like a short torso and just long ass femurs, adding another inch, it may not be the most helpful thing. If you're, if they're using something like a Reebok Legacy or an Adidas Lace Tongue where it's like an inch, it can be really annoying to have that extra hip height. You can modulate that by taking the shoes off, but it won't magically change the technique. All the operational principles are going to be the same. The programming is going to be very similar. You just kind of have to be a little bit more careful. People who are built like that, the bang for the buck they're getting for the deadlift, it's going to be more fatiguing than not on their lower back. Like their squat already demands they bend over a shit ton. Their deadlift has their back angle basically like this. It's going to be a hard programming fight for you. So variations like the front squat, probably a little bit better for them to accumulate more volume. So I would honestly say anthropometry will dictate programming because it's going to dictate fatigue costs, but taking off the shoes for the lift doesn't really matter, I don't think.
Nope.
Yeah, so we got to go over. So we'll run through all the topics we want to get through. First thing is we'll just actually, discreetly say what the 5 steps are. In short, we're going to talk about afterwards. We're going to talk about the stance, the grip width, modulations, the shin position, and how that impacts the hip position. Back extension, how does that relate to rounding? The pull itself is really nuanced. Talk about the lats, and then the eye gaze. SK said, I feel like I'm setting the hips and getting good hamstring tension, but still always getting lumbar flexion near PR for 5 loads. Any advice? What do you think, Chase?
If you're failing kind of towards the end of that set of 5, it just maybe you're tired. If you're not wearing a belt, go ahead and start wearing a belt so that you can get a little bit more force to squeeze against and get your lumbar into more extension. But more so, it may just be programming change, right? If you're kind of drawing out towards the end of your novice linear progression, you're carrying out a lot of stress from the pulls, right? So you may need to back off with the stress, start adding in some power cleans, some rows, a lot of variation. Or what I kind of tend to do is just depending on the person, and as I watch them, is if they kind of really struggle it from the beginning, I'll put them into a rack pull to where they're now solidified with extending their back.
Yeah, man. And it's also, if it's a PR, don't expect all your PRs to be super.
Yeah, they're going to look grindy.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I think novices and a lot of early intermediates will think that like PR lifts are just a normal, super casual thing that happens. After a certain point in training, PRs are a dedicated thing in which you are making like calendar-based attempts on, and then that could be mesocycle to mesocycle, where it's a 4-week or a 6-week block where you're gearing up to a PR, or it's literally, I have 2 lifting meets a year, right? And then that's when you're going for your PRs. And then you can't always expect them to be pretty. Theodore said, is it okay to let go of the bar after the 4th rep and rest for 10 seconds? Is that still a set of 5?
That's cutting it pretty close. I'm going to say no. Yeah. It sounds like you just did a set of 4 and then a single.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. Yeah,
like thing. I've kind of done this where I stand up for like a split second, but I try my best to get down into position and then just, get ready and pull. I know that last rep is going to be grindy as fuck, but just like what Alex was talking about, PRs aren't going to look beautiful, right? If it looks seamless and effortless, it's not a PR. It's just a warm up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like people will think, oh, I'm continually hitting, a PR on the NLP. Whereas, you're stronger than whatever you're hitting each time you're hitting it. If you can reliably set a new 5-pound PR every 3 times a week. But all right, well, so we'll go through the 5-step setup, then we'll get the video rolling and we'll get back to some questions. So the first step to the setup is approaching the bar with the shins 1 inch away. How we measure that is whenever the shins are vertical. So we'll typically have the person look from the side, kind of tilt from side to side to check themselves. If they send their hips backwards, they're going to incline the shin or recline the shin, and then from that, the measurement's going to be a little messed up. Most people will end up going, whenever they hear an inch, way too close. People think an inch is like this for whatever reason. It's not just guys' measurement. It's for some reason people say like, oh, an inch, and then they'll get to the point where they're maybe a centimeter away from the bar. An inch is about 2 fingers width. For a normal human, that's probably a fine measure. So I like to use that as a tactile cue, 2 fingers width away from the bar, because those knees do need to come forward. If I can tell the person's back extension is going to be a problem, I'll probably have them set up a little bit farther away to facilitate that just for the first, few warm-up sets. Then we'll take the grip. Grip is step 2. Grip is just outside of the legs. We start with double overhand just to not keep anything super complex. And then 3, how do you normally cue this for shins approaching the bar and knees out?
So I say most important step, right? Because this is really overlooked. And, once we kind of get past this, the initial setup, I find that my lifters will always just kind of blow past this and start roll the bar instead of bringing their shins to the bar. So if I put more emphasis at the beginning, they kind of, have that latch into the back of their brain. But and again, this kind of depends on people's flexibility. But once they have the grip kind of locked and solidified in place, I say, hey, this is the most important step. Bring your shins until they touch the bar and then don't move, right? So then they freeze and then they realize, okay, now this setup is the beginning of the suck, right? Like my back is about to go into extension. My hips are up high. My hamstrings are barking at me. And we'll talk about it as we get further into this discussion. But the setup should be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then this is kind of the first thing that you really introduce discomfort in. Like nothing in the squat is going to be particularly uncomfortable outside of the rack position. But if you're coaching a novice for the first time, your goal should be to make it as comfortable as you can. You know, the goal isn't for them to win a moral battle. It's just to get the bar on their back. So the deadlift, it's the end of the workout, you know, for most people. And it's going to be the hardest lift for them because you actively have to push through that discomfort.
Yep.
I have some more questions on this one because, you know, the shin's approaching the bar. A lot of people will rock forward during this step to get their shins forward. Other people will just enter a little bit of knee flexion and then the knees will pop forward and it'll be just fine. Some people will almost pull themselves backwards and then get the bar into them, you know, so there's kind of three distinct camps. And then we move on to step 4. This is the hard one, back extension or chest up. I really like the way that they phrase it in the book, rotating your chest up between your arms, because you have your arms, this frame of reference that are attached to the bar. They're not going to move. You're pushing your sternum up through your arms. I really like that one. And then, you know, the first time that you're coaching someone, do you normally say like drag the bar? Do you normally say pull the bar? What do you say? Pick it up?
Yeah, I usually try to be, you know, as close as to what the book says, and then that's drag. You know, usually I'll say maybe like push the feet through the floor and then drag or keep it in contact and let it drag on you. But yeah, the drag is emphasis in there. So that way that the lifter gets associated with the bar has to stay close and that I'm not going to lose my back extension because the bar is drifting out in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the short version of the 5-step setup. We're going to watch the video with Bree and starting strength, and then we'll kind of pick through those pieces. Chase, can you see the chat if you want to hit those questions up?
Yeah. So SK Yeet or Yee. Chasing Koseri, at what weight did NLP in for your deadlift? Mine stopped around 530. What about your Alex?
Mine stopped at, I want to say 345 or 355, and I was around 165-ish pounds at the time, I think. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Chase, what's your best pull?
Mine is 700.
7 flat.
7 flat.
Not an ounce in any other direction.
Not even a gram.
I love it. How much did you weigh for that guy?
I was probably 247, 250, somewhere around there.
Is that where you're still hovering at?
Yeah, for the most part.
I love it. It's a big boy. Yeah, my best pull, it's 530, and I clocked it at around 176. At the time, I was still cutting down to 160 for grappling competitions. Mm-hmm. I'm now no longer cutting down to 160 because fuck that.
Yeah.
A 15-pound water cut is bullshit.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. That's no one wants to do that. That's a little bit too high of a percentage.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so we'll start this video. We'll watch this guy, and then I'll talk you through whatever Rip is talking about. So he compares the stance width, about 8 to 12 inches apart at the heels, toes pointed slightly out, about what you would do for a standing vertical jump. How often do you play with toe angle right off the jump, Chase?
It kind of, again, depends on people's anthropometry, right? So like if I've already ran them through the squat and I know that, you know, a lifter who's basically built like a skyscraper and has really short femurs, and they're going to have a hard time kind of getting set up to the bar to where their shoulders aren't too far over weight, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exaggerate their toe angle a little bit. Just a slight correction, just like, hey, go a little bit wider than this. And, you know, for the most part, we've kind of already touched over this on the squat, just not to this extreme angle, right? And then, you know, kind of adjusting their hip height to where they're in a more comfortable position and they're not so far leaned over the bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the toe angle can be a big help for these things. Mm-hmm. Chase, can you still see Bree on the screen on your end?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this part, surprisingly difficult for most people, right? So we covered the stance, we got them onto the midfoot, we rotate the toes out a little bit, you know, all the distances are correct. When we'll have them go and take the bar, a few things will happen. The knees will shoot forward immediately. They'll think they'll kind of have to keep their chest up. Something that Bree's doing right now is looking straight down at the ground. A lot of people are very uncomfortable and unwilling to do that right off the jump, right? Because For most people, especially kind of the more unathletic the person, they're going to try and keep their gaze straight in front of them, really, no matter what they're doing. It could just be a carryover from previous exercise. So oftentimes during this step, I'll have to say, send your face down with it. So like reach down and grab the bar and look down at your hands, right? Or even cue them to look at the bar before they even grab it. Because when she's bending over like this, we need to make sure her knees are straight. So you can say like, hey, keep your knees straight. Sometimes people still really won't even do that. Now, at this point, we have the whole getting the knees forward to have the shins touch the bar thing. And then he's going over the importance of not rolling the bar forward or backwards at this point.
Yeah, a lot of people will try to squat into position. And yeah, you went over that, Alex. But yeah, I have a lot of people who will just kind of lean and put too much weight on the bar, and they always tends to drift it out in front. And it's the hip height position, which Bree's about to get into, people cannot hang on to, especially the ones that are really detrained and stuff. This position is just really hard to get into, period, with just how your hamstrings are stretched and just how your back is going to be in an extension.
Yeah, it is for sure. This is kind of the point where it starts to get complicated. I'll watch people attempt to coach this, and they'll get through the first part just fine, and then this part where everything screws up. Now this point, so let's pay attention to her knees and her elbows, kind of use these as two reference items. And we say whenever we want to get the shins to the bar, notice how her shoulder is going to remain more or less in the same place, right? So we'll see this again. Her shoulder is going to stay in relatively the same place. One thing that you'll end up noting that happens is that the shoulders will either come back and the bar will roll, or they'll start to sit behind and under the bar. And that's when the hips come down a little bit too much, right? So you can get to the shins to the bar in a few ways. Some of them are incorrect. I've noticed that this is, it kind of sets up the most errors. So it's like, even if back extension isn't great, we'll still be able to pull the bar. Even if the midfoot distance isn't great, if it's 95 pounds or 135, we'll still be able to pull it. But with this, it kind of sets up the comfort for the pull, I feel like, is keeping the hips in the right spot. Chase, what are your, how do you normally talk through someone keeping their hips really high at this point while also sending the knees forward? Because a lot of people will ask me, how am I supposed to keep my hips up while my knees go forward?
Usually I do it from the standpoint of the knees, right? So like the knees are kind of like the anchor in this position. And once they're set, then the hips kind of just fall into place, right? I'll just try to say, hey, put the knees in the crook of your elbow. Don't let them change or anything like that. And, Bree kind of slightly dropped there. If they did drop too much and kind of let sink her down into like almost a squat position, I come up and just raise them in the proper position and say, hey, look, see how your knees aren't past your elbows or they're not behind, and just kind of cue it from the standpoint of there, like having that tactile touch and that feedback of the crook of the elbow. Yeah,
I love that. This is 100% the time for tactile cues. Like physically, you can like get your knuckles, put it in both sides of their hip crease, pull it back. For more stubborn cases, you'll literally have to like grab the sides of their thighs and physically pull everything up and back. And I'll normally tell them before that happens, make sure the bar doesn't leave your shins. You'll pull it back, and then the whole system will rock backwards for them.
Out of any lift, like you can get away with just tactile cues for the deadlift. It doesn't. You could be, blind. You could be mute. You can physically just put everyone into position and be totally fine. That's what I love about the deadlift. It makes it so easy to coach.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's also kind of a comfort thing. I think it's a comfort and charisma thing that a lot of coaches will oftentimes fall short on, is the ability to use tactile cues appropriately. Like, you need to be able to touch your lifter. You need to be able to move and manipulate your lifter. And you'll meet a lot of people who are either skittish about it or doing it in some sort of weird, shitty way. That's not a great way to pass your platform exam for sure. But this frame right here that Bree's in, it's the perfect setup for the deadlift. It's the back angle that we're looking for. Extension is there, hips are in the right place, knees are coming out. Now, for the chest up portion, for the back extension part, how do you normally start to address this with someone? If someone's like, I don't know what back extension is, how would you start to explain that?
First, I try to cue them, right? And if they're still not able to get their back into extension, I'll make them stop. We'll go through some Superman drills where, they're laying on their stomach and they're essentially arching their back. After that, I try to get them into position and then cue them then again. Nick Dougaldeo came up with a very, very helpful cue of, once we kind of, shove out the knees and in the crook of the elbow, I tend to say, hey, there's a gap now. Your stomach is going to have to fit in that gap. So shove your stomach in between your legs. And the vast majority of people will understand that and do it. But this is where you kind of have to be creative with your cueing, right? With the chest up, sometimes that works. Sometimes it's, hey, avoid my finger as I'm touching you in the back, or I want to see wrinkles on your shirt. Just various numbers of cues to get your back, your lifter rather, into extension.
Yeah. So for a novice coach, this is going to be one of the areas that has, I think, this is where you can start the jazz process for coaching, and then starting to see the video go away. There it is. And then starting to see for people like what your communication skills really are, you know, because it's different for literally every lifter. Everyone will have like 5 or 6 in their back pocket that'll be good, but you need a solid like 10 to 15, I think, to kind of work through this for most people. One thing that I always like to say is that, you know, you can do 90% of your work here in between the set. The last 10% of it is going to be during the set. You don't want to make it so that you're introducing new cues or bombarding them while it's actually happening. I think back extension for the deadlift is something you should be talking about during the rest periods. And like Chase is saying, you can do the Superman drills. The point that I like to express to people is that you should feel your back changing shape, right? It should feel like something's moving. Like I can feel if my arm is moving from here to here, right? It's not just me squeezing my arm. With your back, it shouldn't feel like everything is just bunching up. It should feel like it's getting long and straight, right? And you should feel some things move. It doesn't matter where they're moving or how they're moving. Something should feel like it's changing shape or reorganizing. Because a lot of people, when they'll think they'll get their chest or squeezing their chest up, what they'll do is they'll just pull their armpits down. They'll kind of flex their lat and their pec. They'll pull both of this stuff down. They'll be like, oh, I'm really tight for the deadlift. And they will be completely rounded. So to get people to understand, like, we're not trying to get anything tight yet with your arms or your hands, but what we're trying to do is physically take your spine from this shape to this shape. That kind of seems to click for a lot of people. And like Chase said, there's always the option of, you know, like, okay, you're going to have to go to the rack pull. You know, you're going to have to go for the rack pull for a while. And then after the rack pull, we're going to slowly work it down, you know. Yeah. So then outside of that, what is your level? Actually, we have some questions here too. Mixed solo, who should do sumo? Everybody, it's cool as shit. Final answer. What do you think, Chase?
Maybe someone who has one arm, man. But no, it's really, I mean, if you're going to compete, yeah, okay, you can bend the rules and you can use sumo for competition's sake, but I'm going to have everyone pull conventional. I have yet to see anyone who cannot fit the model and can't perform a conventional deadlift. So I'm going to make them conventional deadlift. Yeah.
Yeah. So like everyone should be able to conventional deadlift. There's really not too many contraindications for doing conventional deadlift. Reasons for doing sumo, if you are just really unlucky and have very short arms for whatever reason, and your torso angle is constantly almost like declined if you're doing a proper setup, that just sucks, right? You can do a sumo, whatever, it's not the end of the world. The other thing I would say is that it's a really good tool for rehabbing the conventional deadlift. So if someone has like greatly sensitized their back and they're like, anytime I do any conventional deadlift, it just hurts my back, right? You can be like, okay, you know, we'll try starting with a rack pull, we'll try starting with a Romanian, and then to get you down to the floor, if sumo feels a little bit better for you, you can run that for a block and then revisit conventional just to give you confidence back, you know. It is definitely, I would say, less fatiguing than the conventional deadlift because it's just more flattering from a mechanics perspective, you know. So if you run into the problem of your deadlift costing too much in your programming, you can probably reduce that cost by doing sumo, or you could just make different load management calls. You know, you can solve that problem in either way. Sigzred, would you advise moving the grip out to get more room for the chest to press it out between the arms? I feel like my tries are blocking my chest. What do you think, Chase?
Make sure that your grip is, just outside the shins, maybe a few finger widths outside, but I've never really ran into the problem where like a person needs to go like almost like a power clean grip for a deadlift setup.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Phil Heath, Dorian Yates, maybe.
Yeah, but
if your tries are blocking your chest.
More so, I think you just need to learn how to actually set the thoracic into extension. You may be showing off the chest just a little bit, kind of flexing your pecs, like what Alex was saying, and that's what's causing the little bunch up sensation that you're feeling. But yeah, I don't think you have a problem with your lats being in the, or your triceps being in the way.
That would be sick if you did, though.
Yeah, you just all triceps.
Man, I would be jealous. Just 25-inch guns, weigh 90 pounds. Yeah. So the grip width, we'll talk about modifications to the grip width, and I think Chase has some new clients in the heavier side, so we'll have to talk about training the deadlift with them, and then having to move the grip out. So that's good release for that. Greg Locke says, "What is a good chicken breast per pound of body weight per day ratio for a healthy male lifter?" How many pounds of chicken breast do you eat a day, Chase? Are you a chicken breast man?
Nah, man. I eat more beef. I would say like 8 pounds. 8 or
per
10
day?
Per day, yeah, you can easily eat that.
Are you what? Are you high or is this a joke?
No,
no jokes allowed on this podcast.
So okay, let's say this, right? You have 2 per meal, that's 3, so 6 pounds out of the way, right? And
how much does a chicken breast weigh in your brain?
No, he said how many pounds of chicken breast.
Yeah,
right?
I'm saying what is an average chicken breast to you?
I'm gonna say like 1.5, 2 pounds.
Okay, that's a pretty big chicken breast, my man. That's a big ass chicken breast.
Where are y'all buying your chicken breast?
I feel like a normal chicken breast is like 3/4 of a pound tops.
Maybe I'm just buying oversized chickens. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just don't buy enough chickens. Maybe I'm just shooting shit out of my ass.
God damn. I go for 2 a day. I do 2 chicken breasts a day. I have one with lunch, one with dinner. They're both like solid 40, 50 grams of protein in there. Easy peasy. Chase thinks 6 pounds chew 6 pounds, drink the other 2.
No. Yeah. You're going to have to be really creative with this. You're going to have to blend the fuck out of this and just be like Blaine Summers and just make some chicken shakes. Many people have done it in the past. I've done it before. It's not actually too terrible. You just can't, let the thing get too hot or spoil because that will put a damper on it.
I'm a whey protein guy, man. End of the day, whey protein guy. I
am too, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Better solution. Stigsrid said, so what I've gathered from your previous advice, the narrower stance, the better. Why do all world-class strongmen pull with a really wide stance, shoulder width or above? They are attempting to shorten the range of motion within the confines of their rules. So in strongman, sumo deadlifts are not allowed on items that are classified as a deadlift or a pull. So something like a stone lift, for example, it's a sumo deadlift. Your arms are inside of your legs. For any of the odd lifts, so like if they're picking up a keg or if they're going to be picking up a sandbag, their legs are going to be wider than their hands are. I think Chase and Rip actually did a funny video on this about how to pick up a heavy object, and it's like a piece of wood or something from like 5 or 6 years ago.
It was the block of we use it just like if we're doing box squats, or I think what they originally were just blocks for like a jerk or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we use that.
Exactly. It's a sumo pull. When you pick things up, normally you're normally going to straddle your legs around it so you can get it over your midfoot because not everything's a barbell. They're attempting to shorten the range of motion as much as they can by doing that. So like a classic example of this is like Jerry Pritchett, for example. I'd probably argue Jerry Pritchett, his is super wide. His is a crazy wide.
Yeah. He
could probably cut off literally 8 inches of range of motion if he pulled his grip and his stance in, but it's so trained to this point that he'll never be able to change that, at this point in his career. We got a question for Chase. How's SS OKC going, Chase? You guys filling up quick. And then C said how many eggs a day? So you can handle those 2 for 1.
All right, so SK, yeah, we're doing really good, man. We're averaging about 2 people per week on the signups, so that's right on course. We're getting just all various types of people coming in. We have a bunch of kids I say a bunch of kids, about 1 or 2, one in the evening, one in the afternoon. One's a wrestler, one's a soccer player, so they're pretty fun to coach. And then we have some pretty old clients at 5:30. They're kicking ass. And then just slowly filling up. We're doing good. And then how many eggs a day? Dude, I can eat eggs just a huge amount in one sitting. Like I've easily, I think my record's like 14 or 13 in one sitting, which they're just easy just to kind of.
It's like one bite, just over easy, and you can drink them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, in a normal sitting, I'm like 5 or 6 easily.
5 or 6. Man, Chase's fat macros off the fucking charts, dog.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah, off the charts. That's that diabetes for you.
Hell yeah.
That's what it is, man. Macros, 40% fat, 50% protein. this image right here, back to the deadlift. We'll wrap this up pretty quickly, and then we'll start watching videos after this one. All right, we're going to come back to reference this. I'll always call these positions 1, 2, and 3. 1 being correct, 2 being hips too low, 3 being hips too high. So the most typical errors, the CrossFit type of error will be position 2. They'll always want to pull into position 2. The type of error of I'm afraid of letting my hips drop because I think hips drop is bad from starting strength is position 3. Which one of these do you think is harder to coach out of for you, Chase?
More so, I see 3 a lot. It's just from people not having the confidence or the strength, rather, to get down into position, just like the squat. So kind of forcing them down and actually shoving their hips down, and you kind of see like their eyes widen and they kind of have that shake in their legs. It's hard to get them in place. But at the same time, 3, I think, is easily more trainable since it's just a strength issue and they get stronger doing our method really fast, versus 2, it's just the movement patterns ingrained into their brain and you have to physically move their hips into the right position time and time. And after like 2 months of doing this, they finally can do it by themselves.
Yeah, you have to literally imprint an entirely new length tension relationship on every muscle involved, right? So whether you realize it or not, you are imprinting the correct or whatever you've been doing pattern into you and how you produce force every time you do it, right? So if you start deadlifting with a round back, you're going to finish your deadlifting career with a round back, right? Which is why we want these things to be set. We want the hips to be high. So for a lot of people, they'll end up learning too. They'll be like, yeah, you put your hands on the bar, get your hips under it, squat it up, basically. And then they'll end up constantly with bruised shins. And then anytime they try to pull it, they'll bang it out in front of them. But yeah, so we'll go through these and we'll compare these back to whenever we're watching the videos. But position 1, it comes off the ground this way because we have our shoulder blades right over the bar, and it makes the lats in a really preferential area to pull from, right? So the lats are their strongest when they're pulling at that 90-degree angle on the humerus, and that's going to be when these hips are kind of in this happy medium point. It's going to be at a stronger line of pull than it is for position 3 and position 2. Position 2, it has a little bit of an ellipse for it if you pass it. So like imagine if the guy in position 2 is doing a really wide sumo, his lat angle may be like 40 degrees. At that point, the lats aren't the limiting point in the deadlift anymore, right? Exactly. So it almost doesn't really matter. But if you have someone doing the really far out in front of them stiff like a deadlift, let's say you're doing a deficit stiff like a deadlift, that lat is going to be one of the limiting factors because their arm just wants to hang plumb to the ground, all right. So Chase, talk a bit more about that. I'm going to get some videos going.
Yeah. As we saw in like the number 3, the picture there.
I'm pulling up a number 3, by the way. Some guy who's exactly like this.
Well, so the problem that I see mostly with people like that is that the bar tends to slide out in front of them, or rather just drift out in front. It's just the lats cannot work in that angle, right? It's putting so much stress on them to where they can't overcome it, especially as a new lifter is trying to learn this. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to pull the bar back with thoracic extension, and that's fine to a point. But again, the moment arm on the back in that situation is just too great, and the lats can't overcome it.
Okay, so we got Jacob here. Jacob just submitted a priority form check for us. We got that in. Emailed him yesterday about this. This is a good example of starting with the hips too high, the shoulders too far out over the bar. And then one of the solutions, I believe Chase may have touched on, is that it can compromise back rounding or back extension because your body is trying to get into an area where it can pull from.
Yep.
Right. So essentially, imagine if, Jacob here, I'll pause on this one. So look at how far out his shoulders are in front of the bar. So if we have the bar right here, the bar is basically bisecting him probably 3 to 4 inches above his navel. And then past that is his shoulder. So if we can have this vertical line right here of where the bar is, his shoulder blade should be right over the bar at this position. His hips are way too high. If he were to try to actually pull this, his lats wouldn't be strong enough and the bar would just swing out. Like his arms would hang plumb, basically, with gravity, arms would be vertical. To make this pull successful, what you'll see happen is the spine goes from nice and long, his spine compresses itself and it rounds in order to get the shoulders a little bit closer to the bar itself. So rocks back rounds a little bit, and then it gets just worse and worse through reps 4 and rep 5 here. Yep, so shoulders, he's starting a little bit more back this time. Yep. And then you'll see the rounding.
And this is where like the temptation of like the sumo kind of starts creeping in with people like this, where, they read online, like, yeah, I have the same issue. What I did was I changed up my stance and now I don't have that issue anymore. But Alex talked about it earlier. It was just like, it still doesn't give the lats their proper function and you're not training them as effectively. You got to just work on, maybe widen out the toes and getting the stance properly fixed, but more so it's just getting everything aligned and getting the hips in the proper position right from the start.
Yeah, so we'll compare position 1. So this is deadlift rep 1. He's about 2.5, 3 inches off the floor. The bar is a little bit forward of his midfoot. Okay, and then we'll compare this to rep 5 as it gets off the ground, and we'll try and see what the differences are. Okay, a little bit too late there, but back extension is pretty similar. What do you think, Chase?
Yeah, I think he started out with a little bit more backgrounding just due to from some fatigue and stuff like that. But he's getting into a position that's similar to the position 1 that we saw earlier. But the problem with it is that he's getting in that position halfway up it, right? So his back is now, totally overworked. And I'm sure as he gets heavier and heavier, he's going to complain of some back issues. And that's just because of the thoracic flexion.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that you'll notice is that people who start the deadlift in position 3, hips too high, their hips will come down as they start the pull. People who start in position 2, the hips too low, their hips will come up in the pull. It can just happen a quarter of the way as basically once the bar is near the knees, or you can just get there in the first place, right? And that's what we prefer, is to get people there in the first place. So the big recommendations here for Jacob was to basically think about getting the collarbones over the bar, maybe take the belt off for a little bit so we can feel his lower back, but rocking back a little bit earlier, getting into better back extension, keeping the shoulder blades over the bar. In terms of, I have one question for you, Chase, on the pacing for this. How do you like to deal with people who take that long in between their deadlift reps? That was quite some time.
Usually I just yell at them to go faster.
Speed it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the simplest thing. Now, if it's someone online, I can't. I can just only say, hey, can you speed it up? And it never fixes. So I kind of let it be. But yeah, if I have them in person, I'm actually touching them, and I have this sense of urgency of kind of like a woodpecker just picking at them, just saying, hey, go, you need to hurry up.
This is an interesting one. I think he has golfing gloves on.
Oh, shit.
Double overhand in a Nautilus squat rack, which you just don't see often.
No, this is amazing.
This is pretty cool. He has some rifles in the background. He's geared up, ready to go. All right, so this is a standard number 3 position pull. Someone who's afraid to get their knees in the game. And then we'll see a few things here if you are, being attentive with it. It's not like he doesn't have any weight on the bar. He has 275, 85 on there. What you're going to notice is as the bar breaks off the ground, it does this little swing out. And then that is exactly what we were talking about with the lats, right? So at that 90-degree pull angle, whenever the hips are a little bit lower, the back is set into extension, the lats have a good enough chance to keep the bar in the shins. Whenever the hips are too high like this, he may be able to break it off the ground if it's light, but it will pop out and the arms will return to plumb because the lats just can't really do their job as much. How would you go about fixing this guy, man?
Definitely deload a little bit, but just dropping the ass and then forcefully thinking about maybe making the shoulders come up first. So as you saw, he's essentially keeping relatively in place, and he's kind of initiating with the back or the low back coming up first. Just making him work more from the quads and getting more knee extension involved into the lift. Yeah,
get your quads in the game, man. I think you're setting up a little bit too close to the bar for sure. I would recommend taking off the New Balances as well. And then what you want is, like, if you're looking at it straight from the side, if you have your arm here, your knees should be flush with your arm. You don't want your knees entirely behind your arm. That means the hips are too high. You just want to make sure those things are lined up for you. So for you, your knees are well behind your arm. The bar needs to be a little bit farther out so your knees can come forward and in. But these are some strong, stiff-legged deadlifts, man.
Yeah, and it could be a matter too of the belt. Kind of what I see too is that people in this certain situation is that now they've overstressed their low back because essentially, they're doing a stiff leg deadlift and they just crank on the belt to where now it's even harder to get in that position because they can't extend their back. So I would just take off the belt completely and just work on getting the quads into it.
Yeah, take it down to 225. Push the floor away from you.
Yep.
Yeah, you'll be good. Also, ditch the golfing gloves. That's it.
Yeah.
Save those for another day.
We got Andrew Travis in the chat. Do you ever see the hips rising faster than the shoulders, even with a correct setup? I do not. I've never seen that.
I do not either. So we'll do Mrs. Stigsrud here. I think this is Stigsrud's daughter or younger relative, if I had to bet. Is this 185?
185? That's what I thought too. That's kick-ass.
That is pretty kick-ass, man. Stigsrud, let us know who this person is. Hopefully he bought fake plates. Now this is moving like it's 185. This is 185.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
That's kick-ass. How do you feel about these polls, Chase?
At the start, they kind of started off pretty strong, and then as she got more and more tired, you can kind of see like she's getting into position 2 that we were talking about earlier, where she's kind of squatting down in position. People tend to kind of get down in that position because it feels easier on them. It's a little bit more comfortable, and they kind of rest down there. They kind of catch their breath, and then they start the pull. The problem with it is that you can kind of see is that she's exerting all this effort to then get into position 1 before the bar actually breaks off the floor. So she's doing more work essentially to get nowhere. You got to get your toes out just a little bit wider, make sure that you're in the proper setup, and squeeze the bar back into you with your lats and keep your hips up high.
Yeah. A few other things. Stigsrud in the comment that said, that's my younger sister. She's 16, pulling 80 kilos. Kick ass, man. Yeah, have her eat some more protein for sure. Just buy her some protein shakes, keep them in the house. And also notice she has a little bit of a leg length discrepancy. So she's shimming on her right foot. And whoever seemed to have shimmed this did it very correctly. So good work there. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't recommend keeping all of her pulls at this level of intensity because you are going to see those form errors that just break down because the lats aren't strong enough. I would actually cue her a little bit to kind of pull herself more behind the bar and really a lot of lat cueing, a lot of tight armpits, a lot of pulling your elbows down to your waist, shoulders down to your waist cueing. And then just get her a ton of work in the 80% range while she gains weight if she's only 16. So yeah, these are pretty kick-ass pulls, man. Interested to see your squat. Send her squat in Stigsrud. I'd like to see how that leg length discrepancy impacted that. Any other thoughts on this, Chase, or next one?
Usually with the deadlift, I don't really see the need to shim with the leg length discrepancy unless it's really drastic. I have a lot of times I have lifters just don't even bother it. It's more so for the squat. Have you noticed that at all, or am I just kind of like the only one I need to reevaluate what I'm thinking?
I think I've noticed it on the deadlift in so much that it will affect either bar tilting / twisting, especially the person's using a double overhand grip. It'll just kind of rotate the whole system. So like you'll notice the hips kind of pulling into one position. If it's a problem, it's a problem, but there are a lot of people who it's not. They seem to have done it very proactively though, and she's a 16-year-old pulling 80 kilos. So who are we to talk about this? Let's see what's going on with Johnny G here. I don't know what lift this is, but we'll find out. Oh, this is a squat. Get out of here, Johnny G. Get out. I wanted to go over this one. This is one of my boys, Eric. He was having a rough day. He thought these pulls looked terrible. We'll take a look at them. And this seems to be, I think this is 345 on the bar here. And this was for like an at 10 / 0 RIR / please help me level of difficulty at the end there. How do you feel about these?
One thing I think his stance is a little bit too narrow. I think what's causing that major flexion that you can see is that he's not getting set due to his thighs being in the way. I want to see his toes out a little bit more, see if he can't widen out the stance another 3 inches or so, and just think about that gap forming because you shoved out your knees and your stomach is going to fit in there or your belt's going to be in there and you're just squeezing the hell out of your back and pushing. Yeah,
that's a good take to have. I'm interested that you went with that one. When we look at it from the front, the arms are pretty vertical. So if we widen the stance out, we'll probably have to either tilt the legs in a little bit and collapse there, or move the grip out. I think the big thing here for me, I was a little bit upset about the belt. This was the first time he kind of tried that configuration where like buckle on the side.
Oh, I gotcha.
That was an interesting one. I'll sometimes see people flip it to buckle on the back. I honestly think the belt is just too tight. I think one of the big problems there for him is he'll just kind of rush back extension towards the later reps. So like I've noticed some people they'll take like that, like I think it was Tito maybe. They'll take like a 10-second break between rep 4 and rep 5, and then other people will condense their breaks. So like the first rep, they'll take 2 seconds, second rep 1 second, third rep 0.75 seconds, and then they'll just basically they'll think I need to go faster because I'm getting tired already, and then because of that they'll just rush the whole thing. Tempo wise, I think these are definitely rushed. Yeah, I think I'll stick with Eric also. Yeah, we'll try widening up the stance a little bit, playing with the belt.
Yeah, he's kind of getting drifted into his toes too as he's pulling.
For sure.
So yeah, he's gonna have to think about keeping his ass up and back too, and almost making that come up first.
Yeah. And then we'll get what else we got here? We'll see what this is. This is Millen Chicks. Here we go. Nice pull. So we got 335.
Looks like
345 in the bar.
Is that 2.5?
I can't tell if that's a 2.5 or a 5. Not sure. It's something. Guy in the leg press is jealous. These are moving really fast. I'm curious if you actually need straps for these.
Yeah, for the most part, these look pretty good.
Yeah. That guy's only ripping out. The guy in the back is using a bumper plate in the leg press.
Yeah, fuck that dude.
Fuck that guy. God damn it, guy.
If anything, I can see is just as you get tired on those last few reps, you're starting to kind of lose that back extension. Just like the first one, man. Whatever you're cueing yourself, cue yourself even harder on the last two. Whether it's making wrinkles on your back, squeeze the hell of it until it cramps. Something in that sense to where you're maintaining the same degree of back extension throughout the set. Yeah,
he's a really good example of someone whose back angle almost looks horizontal at the correct setup, right? So we'll try and, so like that's what his back angle is going to look like. You'll run into a lot of weightlifting coaches or, powerlifting coaches or whatever, and they'll see this back angle and they'll be like, we need to do whatever we can to get this more vertical. These are just the cards that he was dealt here. So the deadlift is going to have a higher fatigue cost in your lower back for you than someone else who's super long torso and their back looks like this. But yeah, what Chase said was spot on there. Like the cueing needs to get more intentional as the set goes on, not less intentional. Yeah, I really like these overall, dude. Really like
these aren't bad.
Yeah, maybe ditch the straps. Maybe do over under hook grip. I found that straps. I don't know. What are your thoughts on straps for most intermediates, man?
I feel like if you are doing a bunch of pulling, if you're doing the Olympic lifts every single day, or for some reason you're doing a bunch of like accessory work with dumbbell rows, deadlifts of some sort, then maybe you need some strats. But for the most part, for an intermediate, just doing like a normal progression, no. You got to still stress the grip. And if you're doing like an overload movement or like an RDL, then I would probably prescribe straps, mostly due to just the weight being heavy and then the eccentric part on your grip most people aren't used to. I would avoid the straps though for as long as possible for an intermediate.
Yeah, I think for me, I honestly find that I pull slower in straps. I don't think it's a load management thing either. I think it's just like the process of getting set up at the bottom for like 8 seconds. You know what I mean? It's just kind of it really takes the gas out of it. And I think honestly, there is a lot of, I don't know. I don't remember the fancy exercise science term, but there has to do something with basically relevant activation in relationship to how hard you're squeezing something. Squeezing the bar in the bench press can be a really relevant cue for increasing bar speed. Having the feeling of the weight in your hands can really help you feel like you have to move the bar faster or with more urgency, or basically just kind of increase, motor unit activation. Whereas with like using the straps, I feel like I can get really lazy with it. Chase, I wanted to go back to that PowerPoint slide real quick. So we'll share the screen again, application window. Can you see this guy yet?
No.
Here we go.
Yep, there we go.
Okay. Let's go back here. Okay, I wanted to talk about some of the modifications because they came up during what was called when we were watching these videos. So the grip being wider and when, and then the stance. The stance, I always like to start narrow until proven otherwise. I feel like you start wider and then narrow in. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. What I kind of use is it's kind of just like the squat, right? In the sense that it's a miniaturized version of the squat. So whatever I tell people to look down at your stance, it looks like a V with your stance, just kind of like the way a squat stance is. It just helps kind of get everything more seamless with the transition into the setup. But I always feel like I have an easier time setting people's back that way. And it's a little bit easier once now they have that back extension in their brain to now, hey, let's just bring in the stance just a little bit to where they're not essentially losing that big key component of the deadlift once we start, in a much narrower position and then going out wider.
Yeah, the priority being like get back extension working and then screw with the stance afterwards. Yeah.
But like if it's totally egregious, then I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's just too much. If they're trying to do heels underneath their shoulders, then that's their squat, and then you need to bring that in. But
yeah, for some poison in the exercise science or personal training globo gym industry being like, always heels into your shoulders for any lift where you're picking something up has caused me so many headaches in my lifetime. That always kills me. And then the grip wider and when. So when will you ever sacrifice vertical arms at the bottom?
Let's say we have a lifter who has really long femurs and their knees are just constantly jutting into the bar path. We're going to have to angle out their toes to where they're almost doing like a frog stance, and that's going to shove out their grip due to the angle of their femurs. So you're going to see, their grip is going to be a little bit wide, and it's going to be a little bit of an angle because the majority of those times people like that sometimes have shorter arm lengths. So where it's going to look really weird in their setup, and they're going to have a more vertical back angle too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the to add on top of that, the times where I'll have to sacrifice vertical arms, overweight folks. Chase and I were talking about it a little bit before the show. Some people, they're going to have to take a Jerry Pritchett stance because they have a belly very similar to Jerry Pritchett, or they're going to have to, basically start wider as they lose weight. They'll be able to bring it in just because there's just too much stuff going on. A lot of times the bottom position of the deadlift for someone who's at a certain level of, adiposity, it's not in the cards. You'll have to do a rack pull and then work it down. But yeah, Eric is a good example of someone where it's like, well, we can definitely play with that. Move the grip out maybe an inch, see how comfortable it feels, and then use that space to get more back extension. For back extension, Stephen Lewis asked an interesting question to interrupt myself. He said, do you cheat yourself out of effective range of motion when ramping a rep? And then Jimmy Pack said, what does ramping a rep mean? What does ramping a rep mean, Chase?
It's hitching, right? So
he means hitching? Okay.
I think so. The only thing that I can think of a ramping, if it's not hitching, is like, whenever someone's setting the bar down and they kind of like shoot it off their knees and it starts rolling out in front.
Yeah, I don't think it would be. I don't think it would cheat out of them. I'm just wondering if it was an autocorrect typo. That's what I'm wondering.
I don't know, but if it's hitching, it's what's happening is that you're trying to get your shoulders more over the barbell and getting into a more effective pulling position, but in the sacrifice of the bar kind of just jumping around on your legs. So like you'll lose back extension. Sometimes the bar will even dip back down to where now you're pulling again, ramping, bending knees forward after it gets last knees, not hitching. I don't know. Do you know what that means?
I think he may be kind of separating hitching and ramping as two distinct things, but like hitching doesn't necessarily mean the bar stops and then the person sits down and gives it another go. That's like a very technical hitch that you'll see in strongman. It's actually quite hard to do. They're balancing a ton of weight at that moment in time. I think he just kind of means just a light hitch, basically. Just a light hitch. I mean, like, I don't think you're cheating yourself out of a range of motion because it's like it's turning it into more of a knee extension pattern once the knees get back into the bar. I think philosophically I'll disagree with you on the cheating thing because you're still doing the rep. It just kind of depends on what you think, that rep is. I think hitching tends to be a complication of people attempting to pull their shoulder blades behind the bar when they don't need to yet. So I always use a cue set like push the hips through to finish, stand up tall rather than, trying to lean back into it. Mhm. But back extension. So let's say that you meet someone who just they have no idea how to control their spine. What do you think the normal acceptable period of time is for someone, or like what's an average for someone to have no control of their spine to be able to, get into a good extension? How long does that normally take for you?
Oh man. I think about an average about, well, this kind of depends too. So usually what we do is we start people off who just cannot figure out what back extension is in the rack pull, right? Higher range of motion helps produce a little bit easier of a more vertical back angle to where it's easier to set the back. And then lowering them down onto the floor takes a little bit of a process, maybe about 3 weeks or so. And usually about that time, they still kind of half-ass it off the floor to where I'm kind of integrating it. One day we're pulling out the floor, one day we're doing like a low rack pull to where finally maybe within 5 weeks, 4,
Mhm.
they're pulling soundly with a flat back.
Yeah, I think that really comports with the timeline that it takes to like learn a concept, especially a neurological one. It's not like an idea. It's not long division where someone shows you how to do it and then you can do it.
Mhm.
If you had that problem, you wouldn't be someone who can't extend their back, right?
Yeah.
You'd be an athletic person who can see something and then replicate it. But yeah, so I think a lot of people will think like, oh, you should be able to solve that in a session. It's not. It's not solvable within a session. If someone doesn't have that neurological ability to do it, they're not going to create those pathways and magically extend their spine in the course of 2 hours. You can replicate it and mimic it and maybe kind of start to set those fires going, but it definitely does take time. I think that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, especially for the kind of the older, the more unathletic you are, the more overweight you are, all of those things. It's like, even if you take the most clumsy baby deer kind of walking 15-year-old boy, he'll be able to get it in a week. But if you take someone who's like 45 years old, they used to weigh 300 pounds, they weigh 200 pounds now. They go on the elliptical. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up that point. I always love like the picture. Have you ever seen like the picture of like a dude who was? It's 2 people the same age. One of them's been sedentary their whole entire life. One of them's been active and all that stuff. Like they see like the vast marbling, a lot of the adipose, all the fat and stuff on the sedentary person versus the lean muscle, just very striated, perfect muscle belly essentially. Well, you kind of have to now put that into the old lady's point of view, or like the kid's point of view, right? So a kid's fairly active because they're growing, even if they're somewhat sedentary, they're fidgeting around, they're always moving because they just have a higher activities throughout the day in lifestyle versus like the sedentary old lady or just the older person in general. To where now like you're kind of having to change the physiology of the cells, and you're doing a bunch of like all this scientific shit to now make them set their back.
Yeah, it's so complicated at the most basic level. And when I'm saying basic, I mean like small. That you can't expect these changes to happen quickly, and it's not even a indication of coaching quality, right? A lot of coaches will see other people's lifters and be like, "Oh, that person has a round back; they fucking suck," and you're like, you don't know the context to this scenario, even a little bit, where it's something that's just like, yeah, I mean, like, you just have someone who hasn't been doing anything for a while. That process for them, depending on how much time they're doing and what their programming is like, could take literal months, and then for some people, working on the squat is their primary. It may have so much more of a benefit than fetishizing the deadlift when you're not going to be able to make great grands in the deadlift. Part of the nuance of coaching is kind of where to push and then where to let it sit and bake for a while. I'll know for me, if I meet someone who just has absolute trash back extension, they have no hope in the world of doing it. If I probably add 60 pounds to their squat, it'll probably really help that back extension.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Not because they're actively going from a rounded position to extended in the squat. It's just because they're putting weight on it. They're waking all of that stuff up, and they're being a little bit more active, as opposed to, because there's a lot of people who would stop the process right there and they'll do like corrective exercise. That's kind of a big CrossFit thing. Like, oh, you can't do a front squat yet. You have to do a medicine ball squat because, we can't coach your front squat correctly. You can't do the clean yet because you have to do XYZ movement, all that sort of stuff. The only thing I want to cover real quick, we're almost at our hour here, is the gaze for the deadlift. Where do you like people looking?
In our gym, we've set up our platforms to where they're, I think, in front of them so they're probably about 9 to 10 feet. It kind of depends too on the person's anthropometry, right? So if someone's really long torsoed, I'm gonna have them look a little bit further out if they can, not crank their neck into a bad position, but to kind of get them a little bit more set. Someone with a shorter torso, gonna look in a little bit closer, probably about 6 to 8 feet.
Yeah, it's never straight down.
Nope, never.
It's never straight down. People want it to be straight down, but it never is.
Yeah.
So the gaze is something, it's kind of like the grip in the squat. It facilitates the movement, right? So it's like there's no virtue in looking straight down or looking straight up or whatever it is. It's not going to be look up to go up. You are doing those things so that you can facilitate thoracic extension. That's it, right? So if someone has good thoracic extension and their gaze is like 6 to 8 feet in front of the ground, that's totally fine. If they have good thoracic extension and it's 12 to 14 feet or 2 feet on the wall in front of them, it's also totally fine. It's not something I like to play with unless they can't control their chest position, I don't think.
Yep.
Question for SK. Yeah, then we'll do plugs and get out of here. Relationship between the deadlift and squat. Two camps. Deadlift will drive a bigger squat, or squat driving a bigger deadlift, which is correct. What do you think, Chase?
Kind of just depends on the lifter, right? This kind of goes back to like the anthropometry thing. Someone who's just built like an orangutan, where they have a short torso, long arms, relatively short legs, like their squat's gonna be shit. Their squat's gonna be terrible, but their deadlift's gonna be like 300 pounds more, and it's just gonna slowly drive the squat up. Versus someone who's built, with a skyscraper torso, short femurs, short arms, their squat's gonna be amazing, and their deadlift's gonna be shit. Right? It's just the two scenarios with the anthropometry there.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on anthropometry impacting programming. One of the other reasons I don't like templates, surprise, they don't take these things into account, is because, again, there's such a huge fatigue difference and cost between how people are built. And I think that also extends to mentally. Like if someone had a big history of lower back tweaks, and then even if they're really built for the deadlift, but they have an aversion to it, it's going to have a higher fatigue cost for them no matter what, right? Just because they get so antsy about it, or they have to get really hyped up anytime they do a relevant set. Whereas if they're comfortable with the squat, comfortable with the squat. It's whichever one I think you can do more or devote more training resources to. There's no correct answer there. But all right, we'll wrap it up now. Chase, where can we find you at on the wonderful internet?
Just Instagram, Chase Lindley, and then don't forget who's the other account?
Chase_Lindley.
Chase_Lindley. Yeah, that's
the man himself. Have you reached out to him yet? Have you?
No,
you followed him, right?
No, I haven't.
Come on. I don't have an Instagram. You got to do that for me.
Okay. All right, I guess I will.
But yeah, so follow Chase_Lindley. What are you posting anything fun recently? What's been going on there?
No, I haven't. I've just been lazy as fuck. But I actually talked to Ripito not too long ago about my snatch progression, and I've been kind of dealing with how to make the Olympic lifts kind of proceed and get stronger. This is something that I'm starting to learn, is that they don't progress the same way as like a squat, a press, or a deadlift does. Right? This is such a kind of a weird sensation, in the sense that I think it's more of like the physiological demands are now what's being changed, and that takes a little bit of a while, like to where the power cleans, the snatching and all that stuff is more about explosiveness, and it's kind of just getting suited to wiring for the body, and then just making that transition to where you can start pushing PRs. It's really hard, and it just takes a bunch of training. But right now, like I'm sitting pretty well. I'm thinking I have a pretty good setup with my programming and kind of hitting on my weak points. And yeah, I just need to start posting more.
Yeah, peer pressure to Chase post more for sure. John Gloria, we did a squat video already, but we'll probably circle back and do another squat focused one, because we have a bunch of squat videos in the queue. And then Jimmy Packy said, if you're in the channel or if you're in the chat, like the video. Yeah, please do like the video, share, subscribe, all that nonsense. Yeah, I think with a lot of my power sport athletes, Olympic weightlifting falling under that, a bar speed PR or a day where they're like, hey, 200 kilos felt really light to me today.
Yep.
That is infinitely more valuable than taking their deadlift from 260 to 262.5. It's all these little accumulations of speed. It's super fun. That programming, it's kick ass. But all right, you can find me in the link in the description below. I'm not on social media, fortunately for myself, unfortunately for someone else. But I do a lot of online coaching. I work with a lot of athletes, and a lot of people are just trying to get strong. So hit me up if you have any online coaching needs. I believe Chase does some online coaching too, so you can message him.
I do.
But yeah, thank you very much all for watching. Have a good night.